LinkedIn is pretty great at a lot of things, like helping you tap into the latest trends and insights in your field. We cannot stop your coworker from tapping her pencil. LinkedIn can help you find new jobs that align with your career goals. We cannot help you find the source of that weird smell in the office fridge. Ew. And while we can't stop your coworkers from bringing their hobbies into the office, LinkedIn can help you bring your career to the next level. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
Welcome to Supernatural Circumstances, the podcast where I take you down the rabbit hole into the fantastic world of the strange, the paranormal, and the unknown. I'm Morgan Knudsen. Come along with me on this week's adventure. Well, guys, we have back one of what has become one of my favorite guests, Nomar Slevik, who wrote an incredible book called In the Pines. And we had him on actually just recently. He was on not that long ago, but I felt like the conversation wasn't finished, and boy, was it ever not finished. So today we are going to be taking a gander and a walk back through the creepy streets of Maine and taking a look at bizarre humanoid encounters. So what is that? What is a humanoid encounter? What does that mean? Well, in the world of the paranormal, when people talk about that, they're talking about things that kind of trigger the uncanny valley response, which is something looks sort of kind of human, but it doesn't really fit the bill. There's usually something wrong with it. So we're talking everything from creepy vampires to black-eyed kids to, I mean, you name it. Just weird things that kind of hit you like, they kind of look a little bit human-like, but you know in your gut that they're not. So that's kind of where we're going today. And Maine is one of my favorite places, as I've said before, is that some of the Stephen King's books have been centered around some incredible fictional places in Maine, such as Derry and Salem's Lot. And this is always a really neat treat for me to sort of take a peek behind the curtain of what's really going on in such fantastic places. So, let's get this started.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Okay, so I knew that we had to do this again because I was not done with our last conversation. So I'm so glad that you wanted to come back so we can keep this going. So welcome back.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back.
Oh, this is so much fun. I had such an amazing time chatting with you the last time, and we touched a little bit on this subject the last round, but I just felt like we could talk about this so much more, and that is the subject of these weird humanoid encounters. And I was wondering if we could just start off with you kind of explaining a little bit about what we're talking about. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, humanoid encounters for me anyways, and the way I went about research for my book that was dedicated to humanoid encounters was anything that was strange or otherworldly, where the encounter was with something that was humanoid in nature, meaning things that we can recognize as human, but in an uncanny valley sort of way. So we're talking head and shoulders and arms and legs. It's biped, but it's not quite right. Sometimes those are really interesting looking alien type beings, but I can also play a little fast and loose and use some ghost stories along with these humanoid encounters, because a lot of them, do look like people. And but when it gets really interesting is when we start talking about pale crawlers or puckwudgies or even mimics. All of these things come in strange shapes and sizes, but they still look a lot like us, but something's off, you know? But that's kind of
Yeah.
where I started with it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a bizarre topic because I think so many people maybe on the outside of this are going, "Okay, somebody needs to take their medicine today," when they hear some of these encounters, but I mean, they're so prevalent. There's been so many people over the years that are extremely credible that have had just bizarre things happen to them. One of the reports that I remember really sunk home for me was actually and people out there who were fans of the Monsters and Mysteries in America
Oh,
show
yeah.
will remember this, was the case of the gnome, the creepy
Mm-mm.
do you remember that one? The
I do.
creepy gnome, and just for the listeners, there was an episode, and you guys can find this on YouTube because it's out there, of this poor woman, a single mom who ended up moving into this home. It was on almost like a little bit of an acreage where they had farm animals and whatnot, and they had a shed beside the house. And she and the kids and the animals felt this weird presence around this shed, and then all of a sudden, they were hearing footsteps on the porch, like, running around, the garden was getting destroyed, and eventually, they saw what they believe was causing this, which was this weird little gnome critter who she described as, like, this garden gnome that was malicious. And it wasn't just her that described it, it was the resident who lived there prior to her as well, and then when she moved out, apparently, along the Tule River, this was in California, so it was along, in Porterville, California, along the Tule River, the neighbors said they see these things all the time. So that's kind of what we're talking about here today, isn't it? Is these
Yeah.
sort of weird, like, what the hell?
I know, and that reminds me of a story from Maine where there was this woman and she lived in this farmhouse with her husband and her 2 kids, and her husband was away at work and she was at home with the 2 kids, and it had been raining kind of all day and it was now getting into the evening, so it was getting dark, and they were hearing these noises upstairs, and it was really kind of freaking everybody out. Like a door would slam, and they never had paranormal experiences there before. So they were kind of convinced that somebody was in the house. And
Yeah.
so mom grabbed a gun that she had in a cabinet in the kitchen because she was scared and the kids were scared. And for a little bit, they all just like hung out on the couch in the living room. And then they started to hear noises on the porch. And when the mom got up and looked out the window, there were like 5 or 6 of these tiny little like white alien looking things. And it looked like they had like these jumpsuits on, and they were kind of looking around on the porch, almost like the Hopkinsville, goblins kind of
Right, yeah.
situation. And and then she was starting to hear stuff like on the roof and upstairs again. She's like, "Oh my God, are they in the house?" And then she started to hear like the rumble of her husband's big pickup coming up the driveway. So she was like, "Oh my God, yes, I'm glad he's home." And she hears him like, walking up the porch, and she looks out and none of the little critters are there anymore. And she's like, "Did you see, these little creature things?" And he's like, "No," but he believed her because she was so scared.
Sure, yeah, I mean, the people that come forward with these, often, I mean, they're not expecting to see this stuff.
Yeah.
I think of way back, I think the first one I ever heard about was something like the Dover Demon
Yeah.
back in the day, right? Where these or the Fresno night crawlers that are just
Mm.
kind of walking around. It's so diverse, and there's such a broad
Yeah.
spectrum of this. How I don't know, how do you begin to classify this?
I don't even
I don't know
I
if you
don't know.
can.
Yeah, I don't know if you can because I think realistically in regards to us researchers and how we look at things and how we do classify things, I think it's either cryptid or extraterrestrial or maybe something in between that what do we call otherworldly maybe? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
For me that's, if I'm talking to Lauren Coleman, who's the godfather of cryptozoology, at least in my world, he might take some of these things and classify them more as an unknown cryptid, like the Dover
Right.
Demon case, which he famously investigated and coined the term Dover Demon. And, he had considered it a some sort of cryptid encounter. But for me, I always read it as like some sort of little gray alien kind
Same.
of creature. Yeah.
100%.
And, but now after learning and reading stories and talking to people who have seen pale crawlers, it also kind of looks like a pale crawler. But what the hell is that? Is that just, another alien or a cryptid or, we don't know. But with the Dover Demon case, just to kind of tie a bow on that, for decades, because that happened back in, April of 77 or something?
Something like that. It was in the late 70s.
There was never a UFO or alien attached to that story. It was always considered a cryptid, and that there was no UFO sighting, and that just never sat well with me. So I was doing research after research over the years. Like, there's got to be some sort of UFO connection to this thing, and I was in the New Fork database, I was in the MUFON database, and I was looking in the area, for the months prior, the days prior, and before, and trying to find some sort of UFO connection. I never could. But then I got this book. I always have a stack of books that are like need to be read, and there was one called Curious Creatures by an author named Christopher Forrest, I believe his name is. And I think that came out like 2010-ish, something like that. And in that book, he talks about the Dover Demon case. I'm like, oh, great, somebody else talking about the Dover Demon case. Like, it's been talked about to death,
Right.
But he interviewed a family who lived in Natick, Massachusetts, which is pretty close to Dover. And on the exact same night that the first Dover Demon case happened, they saw a UFO in Natick, Massachusetts.
You're kidding.
No. And it actually kind of followed their car for a little while, like for about 10 miles or so as they were like getting home. It seemed to pace them. And while they were driving, they also saw this little creature. And they didn't know what it was. It kind of looked like it could have been like an animal, because it had been, it was April and it was still like the weather wasn't the greatest and everything was that dull color and it was kind of blending in. So it looked like maybe a little animal. But then they caught wind of the Dover Demon sighting, because that kind of blew up for its time. It was in all the papers back then, especially with Loren Coleman and a bunch of his investigators down there trying to find stuff out. So they heard of the Dover Demon case and they're like, oh, maybe that's what we saw. Maybe we saw the Dover Demon and maybe it was connected to that UFO we saw. Yeah. So that was the only connection I could get, the UFO connection to that Dover Demon case. And I ended up emailing the author, Christopher Forrest, to see if I could get the name of the family or any further information. So maybe I could talk to them. And, but he never responded, which was too bad. But it's the only time I found a UFO connected to the Dover Demon case. But even beyond that, Loren Coleman had a Men in Black kind of encounter surrounding this Dover Demon case. He actually didn't have it. It was indirect, but somebody went to his place of business where he worked at the time. It was two gentlemen, and they were actually dressed all in white. So it wasn't like black, but they acted like Men in Black, and they had white motorcycle helmets. Really strange. And they went into his place of business and asked to speak to him. They're like, well, he's not here. And they're like, well, tell him to stop discussing the Dover Demon case. And they're like, what? And they just tell him. And so he came to work and this person told him, and he's like, what the hell? And so he had heard of, he found another example of like men in white with motorcycle helmets that approached somebody else. Yeah. And I think it was regarding maybe a Bigfoot encounter or something. They're really interesting, but he ended up writing it on his Cryptomundo blog when that was going on back in the day. And
I remember that.
so really fascinating that there was, finally found a UFO connection. And then Coleman had his own indirect, like Men in White, Men in Black type of encounter with it. Really strange.
Weird. Oh, that is really strange. I've not heard of the Men in White issue.
Yeah.
That's a new one. Like,
it's a strange one.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some weird encounters like that out in Alberta as well, where we had a couple of times where I've had people out investigating something. Actually, my friend Jason Hewlett, the last time he was out here, it was a couple of years ago, and we were out at this one location, and we had a black truck come and show up. And I mean, we had told nobody where we were going. Like, nobody knew what the plan was for this shoot. We were filming a documentary. Yeah. And we had a black truck with blacked out windows come speeding up. There was nobody else around. Like, there's no other cars around. There's nothing. It was just us. We were out shooting. It was a pretty remote location. And they cut us off, came speeding up, pulled up in front of us, and they kind of did a bit of a U-ey and parked, and they were just far enough away that myself, Jason, and then the crew that I was with, we were like, it's time to get the hell out of here. Like, we don't know who these people are. It was so weird. Like, it was so weird. It was one of the first time that's ever happened to me, where I can like put my finger on it and go, what the hell? Like, are we on to something? Like, what the hell just happened? And how did you know we were out here? Like,
right. That's the
super
creepy
weird.
part.
Yeah, super, super weird. Like, I mean, in the prairie areas in Alberta, like, I mean, we've had some creepy people come up to us over the years, like, you know, people that are pretty sketchy or whatever. But this was so strange because it's like, nobody knows we're out here. Black truck, blacked out window. It was just, I don't know. And maybe I'm just reading too much into it. Maybe it was a bunch of crazies, but it was weird.
I feel what you're saying, though, because I've had a few run-ins. They're few and far between, but this was a long time ago now, probably 2012-ish, maybe. And there was a reported crop circle in this town that was about 2 hours away from me. And I finally went down there on a weekend, and the crop circle had formed back in 2004. So I'm already 8 years removed from it, you know. But with reports of crop circles, they always say that, you know, the grass and stuff grows oddly after one has formed. So I wanted to go down there to this field to see if there were still remnants of this crop circle. So I'm in this big field. It took me forever to find it because I'm on these little kind of back roads. But I finally find this field, and I just park. You know, I'm on a dirt road, and I just kind of park in the road. There's really no other place to park, and I'm trying to get as high as I can, elevation-wise, to kind of look over this field to see if I can see an imprint or a weird growth area or something. You know, and I didn't have a drone or anything at that time. I still don't, but I didn't.
Nothing's improved, really. Yeah,
yeah, everything's awful still. So I'm trying to kind of get the lay of the land here to find where this crop circle might have been, because I had seen photos of it, so I'm trying to line up trees and stuff. But again, I'm fighting against 8 years of possible change. So anyways, I'm doing that, and I can see some dust kicking up down the road, and I realize it's somebody coming down the road. And I'm like, my car's kind of in the way. So I get back to my car and I try to pull it over even further so this person can get by. But they end up stopping maybe about 20 yards in front of my car. Huh. And they get out, and I'm like, okay. And they yell to me and they ask me what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, here we go.
Am I going to start? Should I explain what I'm doing, or should I just say I'm, taking a look at the field or whatever? So I decide to really say what I'm doing. Like, hey, I heard that a crop circle had been seen here, witnessed here, about 8 years ago. Do you know anything about that? And this gentleman, once they finally got a little closer to me, and now they're probably 20 feet from me at this point. And this looks like, he looks like a military person, like in uniform with no emblems. It was really strange. Military haircut, military sunglasses, and it looks like a military jacket and like these pressed crease pants, but there's no emblems anywhere. He's driving a dark looking SUV. I can't remember if it was like black or like navy blue.
Yeah.
And there was no license plate in front. We're a state where you don't have to have it on front and back, at least I think we did at the time. Anyway, but there was no license plate in front. And he was telling me, like, you need to get out of here. This is private property, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this is private property. Like,
Yeah.
is this road private property? He's like, the whole area is private property. You need to get the hell out of here. Just being real jerky about it. And I was like, geez Louise. So I raised up my cell phone at the time, which wasn't, 2012. It's not the greatest, but I just held it up and took a bunch of pictures as much as I could of the field, and then got back in my car. I was like, sorry. And I take off, and he, as far as I know, stayed there while I left. Like, it seemed like he wanted to make sure I was gone.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I get back home, or I pull over eventually, or I probably went to a Dunkin' Donuts or something, and got a coffee. And then I was looking over the pictures, and I couldn't see any remnants of the field or anything. And I was too nervous to like swing the phone over and get pictures of him, because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I regret it though. I kind of wish I did, but
you might not be sitting here right now.
Maybe, yeah. But it was so like the weirdest, like, cause I've been like sky watching for UFOs in areas where there's been activity, and cops have pulled up and like, what the hell are you doing here? And I'm totally parked legally and everything's cool, but they're like, well, this is weird seeing a guy here at 1 a.m.
Right,
So they want to see what's going on, and they're always cool about it. But this guy, with no identification, emblem wise on his person or on the vehicle, I just thought it was weird. And it looked and felt so military, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It could have just been a guy and it was his property, or maybe he was watching it for somebody. I don't know, but it felt weird.
Yeah, like it makes me wonder with some of these encounters, like when you look at some of these hotspot locations that seem to be really prevalent for this sort of humanoid / mimicking behavior, because I kind of tie in a little bit the mimicking behavior with some of this humanoid stuff. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it seems to me, and correct me if you have another opinion on this, but it seems to me like there's almost a concerted effort by some of these beings, and I don't think all of them, but some of them, to be trying to mimic people or trying to mimic the surroundings. And maybe that's part of what the uncanny valley thing is that they don't quite get it right. Like something's off about the face, about the movement. I don't know.
And at least in a mimic sense, it almost seems nefarious too. Like, why are you trying to trick me into, like, for example, the story I have here, this woman in 2009, it was Thanksgiving, and they went for a walk. It was a woman, a young woman, and her mother and her aunt, and they all went for a walk. And the daughter was feeling like kind of sleepy, and after having a big meal, so she's like, "I'm just going to go home." And they're like, "Okay, well, me and Auntie are going to keep walking." And so they kind of split off. And when she was getting closer to the house, she started to hear her mom's voice coming from the woods. And it's like the opposite direction of where her mom and her aunt were walking at the time. And it kept calling her name. And she's like, "What are you doing over there? Like, I thought you were going for a walk. Are you coming home?" And, "No, come in the woods. Come this way. We're going this way now. You have to come see this." And that came across as really nefarious.
Yeah.
Like, why are you trying to lure this person, into the woods? That doesn't feel right, So this woman, this young daughter, she was like, "No, you're not my mom. I'm leaving." And they went home. And as soon as her mom and her aunt got back home, she ran downstairs and she's like, "Did you guys like call out to me?" And like when I was walking home, and they're like, "No, we continued walking." She's like, "I knew it wasn't you." And they were like, "What?" And she told them the story I just told you. And pretty crazy, like, and if that's not nefarious, then what the hell is it,
Well, predatory, right? Like that's how it comes off is very predatory. And it's like,
absolutely.
I know I had a friend here in Alberta who kind of had a similar encounter, and she was out actually hunting with a number of her friends, and she I believe she was in Edson, and she had sort of come down this trail, and any Albertans that are listening that have been to Edson, I mean, it's a small like mining town, and then it has a lot of dense woods. Like, I mean, if you're a trails person and a woods person, you want to live in Edson. It's really beautiful, but it's very off the beaten path. If you take 10 steps off the road, you're probably going to stand somewhere where nobody stood in 10 years. Like,
Wow.
it's one of those places. Like, it's really beautiful. It's really cool, but man, you don't want to get lost out there. So she's out on these trails. She's like really experienced when it comes to hunting, being outside, all of that stuff. And they had come down this little slope, and I remember her saying that she had gotten to they were off the beaten path enough that they weren't near too many people, and there was no footsteps in the snow. I mean, it was winter time. There's nothing out there, and she started to hear what sounded like it was like an elk or some sort of animal, which, I mean, is not uncommon here, but she said the noise was weird. Like, it wasn't a normal noise for like an elk or a deer, but she says it was almost mechanical, like it sounded that way. So
Interesting.
she was like, "Hey, this is like a little odd," and it was coming from one batch of trees that were kind of over to her right, and everybody kind of stopped and were listening, and they decided to sort of keep going. And the more that they kind of hesitated, the sound started to change. And she said it went from being animalistic, like the animal was injured, to a person asking for help or calling for help. "I need help, help." Like, and she said it was so off-putting. Like, it wasn't a normal female that you would expect to be calling for help. There was something wrong with this. And she said she went back, because she has been in a number of my classes over with about hauntings and stuff like that. And of course, you get this kind of phenomenon with those as well. And she said it was so disconcerting. She said she knew it was not a person in the
Yeah.
woods. And the whole group just looked at her and they were terrified. She said some of them were just didn't even want to move. And she said, "No, we've got to not panic. We're turn around and we're going to get the hell out of here," because she said something's really, really off. But it scared her so bad that she won't go back. Like, when I
Yeah.
asked her to, like, "Can we go back to the spot?" And she's like, "I'll give you directions." Like, there's no
Yeah.
way. But I mean, like, what the hell is that? You know, if you've got something that's
Yeah.
mimicking an injured person, or starts with an injured animal and then ends up as an injured person,
Yeah.
like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's wild. I don't know if you're familiar with N.K. Kronda. She's a woman out of Texas. She's done a lot of UFO work, and she even started this project where she worked with inmates who were kind of like a pen pal system, where they were explaining paranormal activity that they were experiencing in prisons and
Wow.
interesting stuff like that. And she had this strange experience. It's a few years ago now, but she was in Texas, and she had gone to a state park, and she was actually like staying the night. She like went out camping and all that stuff, and she's by herself, but she's prepared. You know, she's got a firearm and food, and has her vehicle gassed up and all that good stuff. And it had become nighttime, and she was in her car, and she was in the parking lot, and she decided that her first night, she was going to sleep in the car, and she'd put up all these privacy things up on her windows. And then she started hearing screaming, a woman screaming. And so she's like, what is that? And rolls down the window. Oh my God, there's a woman screaming for help, but it's down this trail into the woods. So she gets out of the car and she's listening, and now it's not just screaming, but it's like, "Help, help," and almost like she was being murdered, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
she got the oddest feeling from it, like, this isn't real. Something's trying to lure me out there.
Yeah.
So she fired off a couple of shots, and it all kind of stopped, you know? So she's like, I can't stay here. So she left and went to this other entrance, I think to the same state park, but she went to this other entrance and found a game warden and explained to him what she had heard. And he was like, "Oh, you must have been the gunshots." And she's like, "Yeah." And so he's like, "Don't go back there, but thank you, and we'll go check it out. And
Right.
she doesn't know what happened since then, but or after that. But it was really concerning because in her gut she felt like
Yeah.
it wasn't human. It wasn't a real thing that was happening. It felt like she knew, or she felt like this thing, whatever it was, knew that she was there, that she was alone. It was trying to lure her away from all of her safety. Kind of
Well, that's
interesting.
what my friend was saying too, and that was her gut instinct as well, is that it was a put on.
Yeah,
And at that point you've got to wonder, well, what what is it doing? Like
yeah,
what is
yeah,
it and what is it doing? And it seems to be that a lot of these are happening, and at least the encounters that I've recorded over the years have happened in wooded type areas. Have you
yeah.
found that as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. It almost never happens in an urban landscape.
No.
I'm sure maybe like down an alley or something. I'm sure there's like some stories out there swimming around, but I haven't heard any personally. But yeah, it always seems to be a woods thing. It usually is somebody who's isolated, or it could be a group of
Yeah.
people that are isolated, but it seems to come out when they, or whatever it is, feels safe enough to
Yeah.
make itself known to lure people to it for whatever reason.
It's so creepy, and you look back at all the different folklore throughout history in different parts of the world, and every culture for the most part has something like this in it.
Yeah.
Some sort of like mimicking or uh like transforming thing, and I mean there's a million different stories around, from each culture as to what that is. But
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it seems to be a phenomenon that is relatively common. Like I know out here it gets attributed to, all sorts of different things, usually in the indigenous cultures or whichever, but it seems to be something that's really, really prevalent. Like, and
Yeah.
it's a little disturbing how common this is. Like, it should
Yeah.
this should be rare. What the hell is happening?
Yeah. Yeah. I was in our national park here in Maine. It's called Acadia National
Mhm.
Park. And, I was up they call it the carriage roads. Back in the day, this rich guy who, like, created Acadia National Park, he made all these roads, for carriage, horse and buggies, so
Makes sense, yeah.
people who were disabled or who were sick could still get out in a horse and buggy and be in nature, and so he made all these carriage roads everywhere. So they've been preserved, and, now people hike them or bike them, and I'm out there on my bike in the summer. And it's usually, like, filled with tourists, so I try to go to a little bit more unknown places, and I'm up in this really elevated area. I think I just got done bicycling, like, 2 miles uphill. Not, like, super, graded, it's probably a less than 45-degree angle, but 2 miles, you get a little tired, So I kinda
Yeah.
reached the crest of this hill, and it's all flat now for a little while, and I just stopped there to have some water, and I'm chilling. It's a beautiful summer day. I think it was July, like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and I heard this whoop sound right behind me, like something was standing right behind me and
Oof.
leaned in, and it was right by my ear. Like, I didn't feel the breath or anything, but I heard the whoop, and you hear about that in Sasquatch encounters, but there's other animals that make those noises. There's moose that we have here in Maine, and they
Sure.
make like this whooping sound. There's also porcupines, and they make really strange sounds that you don't kind of
They
realize that come from
they
them.
really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I heard this, and I'm still like sitting on my bike. I've got one foot on the ground, and I'm drinking water, and I hear this whoop like right behind me. So I immediately turn around, and I thought I was going to maybe see a deer or something. I didn't know what the hell. And I look, and there's absolutely nothing and no one. And I'm like, how
Wow.
did I hear it? Like right here, and there's nothing behind me. However, the woods are, the road's probably 12 feet across, and there's, thick woods on either side. And so now I'm scanning the wood line on both sides. Like, did this thing hide quickly? But there's no trampling of, leaves or anything that I'm hearing. I'm not hearing it, snap branches in the woods or anything. So I didn't know what it was. but my mind did go to Sasquatch or mimic of some sort.
Yep.
And even something like paranormal. Could there be a ghost of a hiker up here? Like, there's definitely stories of ghosts of hikers and all sorts of trails. And so I don't know what it was, but it scared me. You
Yeah.
know, and to me, with that whooping sound, it just the stories that I've heard, I thought it was, Bigfoot in nature. So I contacted a Bigfoot researcher locally and like, hey, here's what happened to me. Here's my experience. And they said, well, we have had reports from that area. So I'll write it down and chalk it up to probably another kind of encounter there. But they
Yeah.
made sure that I knew other animals that can make that sound. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But wouldn't I have seen a moose or at least heard it or
Yeah,
something?
you can't miss a moose. Like, I mean,
Cannot miss a moose. A porcupine, maybe. I might have missed a porcupine.
Yeah.
And if so, okay, that's fair. But why did I hear it right here? I don't know if it was the way the wind was blowing and sound carried, but it was really strange that I heard it like, and I got my hair raised, on the back of my neck. I was like, and, immediately turn around and nothing's there. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how it seems like, all of the folklore and whatnot about you don't go in the woods, don't whistle in the woods, don't, it's like you hear these stories and you're like, it's probably not just folklore, guys. Like there's something,
Yeah.
there's something to it. I know I've always been really fascinated with these sort of woodland type areas because there really is something that's unexplored, I think, within it. And I mean, in parapsychology, I mean, it touches on it a little bit. I mean, you talked a little bit about hauntings and whatnot, and we see this phenomenon in haunted homes and things like that every once in a while, where you've got an entity that will appear or something like that, and just doesn't quite look right. Like the eyes aren't right, and it usually happens in the homes with some sort of negative entity in them.
Mm.
But it's really interesting how it's like there's this sort of attempt at deception, and I mean in those cases it usually is deception related.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a case of that specifically where it's been something that's been good. I remember I had a client and she this was bizarre. So the father was a single father who had a young daughter. She was, God, probably about 6 maybe. And the father, who's a hardworking guy and whatnot, and he worked with my ex, and he would come over every once in a while to hang out with my ex and just chill and whatever. And every once in a while he'd bring his little girl. And she always struck me as kind of this, she's kind of a lonely little kid. Like she just didn't seem to have a whole lot of friends. She'd kind of just fall asleep on the couch. Like she was just a little bit more aloof, I guess, than most little girls her age. But anyway, eventually the father approached my ex and said, I know your girlfriend does this stuff. My daughter's been getting a quote unquote phone call through her toy phone from something. Yeah, it gets weirder. Something that's calling itself Grandma Ghost.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, and this is not an isolated case, but this is one of the many that I've dealt with over the years. But Grandma Ghost started off as this great friend, and then eventually the little girl was saying, "Oh, Grandma Ghost says that if I don't do what she says, that my family is going to get hurt. I've got to do these things, or Daddy's going to be hurt." Like it became very nefarious. Let's put it that way. Very nefarious, very quickly, and
manipulative. It sounds
very manipulative. And I mean, the little girl, she was very believable. Like I don't think she was pulling this out of her hat for attention. She just wasn't that type of kid. And he basically went to my ex and said, I really don't know what to do here. So anyway, I hadn't even talked to him yet. I gave my ex a list of things that I said, here's where he can start until we can actually sit down and have a chat. And I gave him a list of things like, make sure you're not telling your kid that she's bad. Make sure that you're partnering with her. Don't say don't talk to it, because then it'll drive a wedge right right through the relationship you've got, and just gave him a whole bunch of tips. Said, okay, well, we'll sit down. Interestingly enough, between me doing that and the father receiving the list of things that I wrote out for him, he comes to work the next day and says the weirdest thing happened. He said, my little girl came to me the other night and said that Grandma Ghost had called and said that she couldn't be here anymore. She couldn't be around anymore. But she'd like to, if she ever was needed, that she could call. She never came back. It never happened again. So whatever this was had the awareness that it had been busted.
Yeah.
And because the little girl didn't know that the dad had spoken to me or to my ex. Like she had no clue. I mean, she's 6. And, had no awareness that this had been going on behind the scenes. But here's this thing that had taken on a whole other persona in order to try to rope this kid. It was really disturbing, but it's just, again, that sort of that example of like that predatory.
Yeah.
In parapsychology is really weird.
Have you heard of the robot grandma story? It comes from another national park, and I can't remember if it's Great Smoky or I can't remember where it comes from. And I'm not sure of the dates either. I forget, but I think it's early 2000s. Just don't quote me on it. I kind of only remember like the kind of crazier parts of the story, but I'll recap it best I could. So this couple and their 2-year-old son, 2 years old, so very young. Yeah. And I think they had a dog as well. They all went camping, and dad was supposed to be like watching the kid, and he was for the most part, but turned his back for a second, the kid's gone. And he's like, what the hell? So, he gets mom. He explains that, can't find the kid, can't find the dog. And so there's this trail really close to the campsite that we're staying at. And he's like, I'm going to go run down this trail for a little while. Maybe he just went walking down there. And,
sure.
And I'll find, hopefully I'll bring him back. You stay here in case he comes back. So he runs down the trail. He goes about 2 miles. No kid. There's no way it could have gone 2 miles, but he's also making sure to look on either side of the trail, make sure he didn't get into the woods. And he comes running back up the trail, and still no kid. And they're getting pretty scared. So they call the authorities and let them know, like, hey, here's what happened. And so search and rescue came. A bunch of family came to help look for this child.
Sure.
And it's now well into the evening, and it's about 11 p.m. now. And that same trail that he had run down, not even a mile down the trail, the kid was there, sitting in the middle of the trail. And the rescuer, found him, picked him up, be like, hey, are you okay? Like, what happened, And so finally he gets them back up to the parents, and, the parents are like, oh my God, like what happened? They ended up finding the dog like a little bit after the kid had gone missing, which kind of scared them even more. So the dog was okay, but, he hadn't been with the kid the whole time. So the parents are like, what the hell happened?
Right.
And the kid couldn't really explain to himself or to the family what happened. He's 2 years old,
Yeah.
So they bring him to the doctor, and, he's a little dehydrated. He's got some, scratches and bruises, but otherwise he's fine. So 2-3 weeks go by. Everybody's kind of over this, and the parents are at work, or they're going to be at work late. So grandma comes over to babysit, and she's making him some stuff to eat. And while she's doing that and they're hanging out, he goes, you're a lot nicer than the other grandma. And she's like, what? What other grandma? And he's like, when I got lost, I was with the other grandma. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, I went down this trail, and someone that looked like you but wasn't you took me by the hand and brought me to this cave. And when I was in this cave, there were all these purses hanging around, and there was a light up top, and there was a couple of guns hanging around, and there was a ladder. And the grandma told me to poop on this piece of paper. And the kid was like, I don't have to poop. And so it kind of made the weird grandmother angry. So she grabbed him by the hand, brought him back out to the trail, and said, sit here and somebody will find you. And that's when the search and rescue guy found him on the trail.
What the hell?
And he said that she had gone up this ladder to grab the piece of paper for him to poop on. And when she was up there, her head was kind of backlit by this light that was hanging in the cave. And he said it kind of looked like a robot, like her head looked like a robot. And the grandmother told that to the parents, like when they came home, and that's when they finally got the story of like what happened while he was missing. And again, he was saying this all in like 2-year-old speak, so
Sure.
I don't know how much of that is grandma or the parents kind of,
Yeah.
finagling that story a little bit to make it more comprehensible, if you will, but a strange story nonetheless. And
Well,
yeah.
It makes you wonder too, like with kids stories. I always think back to my prior co-host for this show. He had an interesting story that he would repeat when he was little. He ended up waking up to what he felt was a possible gray alien the one night when he was a kid. And interestingly enough, he used the descriptor because he didn't know what a gray alien was. He was too young. And that wasn't something that his family was into or anything like that. And he called it the little man with Spider-Man eyes. And
Oh, wow.
so, which was, because that was something that he could relate to.
Sure.
So it makes you wonder, in a case like that, if, he's using the term like, oh, it looked like a robot, or it looked like, to try to fill those gaps in. So you kind of have to wonder, like,
And
what else could that be describing,
Yeah. And, was it something else that looked older and is only reference to something older was his grandma?
Right.
Or was this a mimic scenario where it looked exactly like her, but when a backlit, it was clearly
Not.
a mask or something, like
Yeah.
who knows? But yeah, that's interesting trying to, when you're young like that, you can only speak to your experience up to that point, and kids don't know what a gray alien is or,
No.
if something is mechanical. Because I think of like the Sandown clown sometimes, and how that was described so strangely, where it spoke through this microphone and kind of looked like a robot, but also, and these are kids describing it. It's really strange,
Yeah, I think when people are taking witness accounts, and that's something we can actually talk about, is when people are taking eyewitness accounts, usually that's what ends up happening is people are just trying to relate that to whatever is in their realm of discernment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the questions that I always like to ask witnesses is, like, say, for example, they say, well, I heard footsteps in the hall. Okay, well, if you couldn't describe it as footsteps, how would you describe that noise? And it's really interesting to see what they come up with, because sometimes it turns into, oh, well, it could have been like somebody sweeping. It could have been a brush on the floor, or it could have been like when they begin to start to take sort of the visual element out of what they think it
Yeah.
was, and what they end up sort of coming up with, that it's like, was it footsteps or did it sound like something else? Like, what if you could use any other term to describe it, what would you describe it as? And that's, especially with kids, I find that it's really interesting to hear what they come back with. Like, you hear this a lot with kids that have reportedly seen Bigfoot, like this little guy, like getting lost in the woods and being guided back to a trail, and they say, oh, it was a bear, like the bear,
Yeah.
the big hairy bear brought me back to the trail and said to wait here or something. So it just, it's interesting. So like when you're taking these stories and reports in, like how reluctant are these people to tell their story, and are they trying to fit it into their own personal framework?
Yes, I do think they are, but I also think it's very important that I just let them tell their story. I
Yeah.
try not to like interject and be like, could it have been, or did it sound more like this? I don't want to lead them, ask
Sure.
leading questions, or I just kind of want to get it all. So yeah, they do describe it in their own way. And I really like that because like you were saying, when they're describing footsteps and you have them picture it in a different way, if they are having trouble kind of explaining what this thing looked like, I'm like, just tell me what you think you saw. I don't care how crazy or outlandish or what you compare it to, just
Yeah.
the most convenient, the easiest way possible. What did it look like? And sometimes I'll hear things like, it kind of had ears like picture a rabbit, but like a really scary dark rabbit.
Right.
The ears aren't that long, but there were just as an example. But I did interview this child. It was with his parents. I was actually interviewing the parents, and it was the child's story that they wanted to tell me. But while they were telling me the story, the kid came in to the room and sat on mom's lap for a little bit, like, "Hey, you remember when this happened?" And like, yeah. And, and the kid said a little bit, but then it went off running again with its siblings and stuff. So I was left with the parents, but the story was, he had been up in his room with his sister. They were both about 4 or 5 years old. And they said that this like grasshopper, this ant type of creature walked into their room and picked them up. And he said it bit them on the inside of their stomach. Just a really weird thing to say. Yeah. So I was trying to interpret that, and I was trying to ask the parents, like, what do you think that could mean? Like, was there like maybe a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach when he saw the creature? Like, maybe that's what it meant. Yeah. And they said like he did this motion where like this thing like picked him up and then like bit him, but he felt the sensation on the inside of his stomach. Strange, but he did this motion as if he was being carried and then lifted up to his mouth, to this creature's mouth. So anyway, that happens, and it kind of hurt a little bit. And then he put the kid down, and he said this alien backed out of the room while he continued to watch the kid and backed out of this room. When it got to the doorway, it turned around and went into the hallway. It looked back at him one more time and then went down the stairs, which were right there. And then he heard the front door open and close. And that's the whole story. And, trying to interpret it in a different way was really difficult, like trying to ask just some discovery questions,
Yeah.
Like, did you show him any pictures of insects to see what it, see if anything looked familiar? And she said that they had this little science book, and she was showing them pictures of ants and grasshoppers and praying mantises and things like that. And they're like, no, not really, kind of. But she didn't have a UFO book or an alien book or anything to show them, to see if something looked more accurate. But so it was the way they described it was kind of like a cross between like an ant and a grasshopper type of thing. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Now, in that same town, I just happened to be having my car worked on and had new tires put on, and I'm sitting in this garage with this gentleman while his workers are, like his office was kind of like the waiting room. And so inevitably he's like, oh, so what do you do? I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yep.
Well, I'm an author, I'm a writer, and hoping it could kind of stay there. And, what do you write about? I'm like, all right, here we go. So, nonfiction stories from Mainers sharing their strange encounters, UFOs and Bigfoot and stuff like that. He's like, oh, well, I got a story for you. And I love it when I get that response, because a lot of times it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. But he's like, I got a story for you. So we're talking the same town. This guy lives, as the crow flies, maybe a mile away from this family that I interviewed.
Okay.
He's outside 5 o'clock in the morning, and he's tinkering around in his garage, and he's drinking his morning coffee, and it's like a nice summer day. He's out there early, and he starts to hear like this whirring, like mechanical motor sound, and it's coming from behind his house. And behind his house is a field and then woods. There's no roads, there's no trails, just a big field and then some woods. But he's hearing it coming from that direction. So he steps out of his garage, and he's got his coffee, and he's waiting because whatever it is getting closer. It's getting louder. And he's like, well, whatever it is, I'm going to see it in a second. And he was kind of like looking higher, thinking it might have been maybe like an airplane, like a water plane that was going to like land on the water, which isn't too far from him. And he continues to watch, and he claims he saw these two like hover motorcycle things, kind of like out of Star Wars. And what was sitting on top of them were these insect-looking humanoids.
What?
And he said like they were the size of people. These motorcycles were like the size of regular motorcycles, but they had no wheels. They were hovering, and they went right by him behind his house. Zzz. They didn't look at him. They didn't pay him any mind. He just saw that, and he's like, well, that's enough for me. And he went back inside. And he's never told that story to anybody.
Oh my
And
God.
and it happened to be like 2 or 3 weeks after I interviewed this family who also had like an insect humanoid encounter. So strange.
Oh, that's so bizarre. I
Yeah.
remember a story, and it again had to do with kids, and I can't remember what the being looked like, whether it was like insect or reptilian like. It was some, I can't remember what the kid described, but um it was a situation where the kid had been telling their mom about their imaginary friend. And usually it's like when I hear that, I'm like, oh, here we go. Negative haunting case. This
Mhm.
is going to be fun. Um, but anyway, uh, I remember the case. It wasn't mine. And she kept saying to her mom, oh, my imaginary friend that lives in the closet. And I guess the closet had like I can't remember whether it had like an old coal chute in it or something like that, but it was like it had an access point out. And the mother had come in the one day, and the little girl was sitting there in her bedroom talking to this closet, which was like partly open, and said, oh, I'd like to have a sandwich. And the mother was like, yeah, no problem. And she's like, my friend needs a sandwich too. And the mother's like, haha, that's cute. Goes back downstairs, makes 2 sandwiches like a good mom, comes back upstairs, passes her kid the sandwich and the second sandwich, and the kid proceeds to pass the second sandwich to a hand that came out of the closet and took the
Whoa.
sand. Yeah. And the mother said she just lost it. She said it wasn't human. It was a hand, but it came out of the closet, and it was this horrendous looking thing that didn't belong there. And the daughter was completely fine with it. Which I have to say would probably have been me as a kid. That would have
Yeah.
been me as a kid. I'm like, why are you beating up on my friend? But yeah, it was. But I remember that story as well, and I can't remember where that was from. I think it might have even been Monsters and Mysteries in America as well. But it
Mm.
was, yeah, and the mother was like, I had no idea. She said, I don't know what it was. I don't know what this thing was. I don't know where it came from. It wasn't a person. But this damn thing was, I guess, I don't know, came out of this area. Like, where are these things coming from, Nomar?
Yeah.
What is going on?
I don't know. Like if I knew,
It'd be a whole
we'd
other
be,
show.
yeah, we'd
Yeah.
be having a different kind of discussion. And yeah, I'm always awestruck by the stories that I find. I never have answers for people. I never
No.
have good reasons. And the only thing I can tell them is, if you don't mind, let me share your story. Hopefully somebody else who's experiencing something similar will get something from it, and,
Yeah. And how
you know,
important is it to, out of all these cases that we've talked about today, that I think really leaning on your instincts truly is like this, because I talk a lot about on this show about being like mindfulness and sort of paying attention to your inner being and your inner signals and whatnot. And I think these cases are just such a primary example of why that's so important. Like, how many cases have we talked about just in the last hour where, who knows, their lives might have been saved from the fact that they didn't go down the trail or they didn't
right.
respond to, it seems to me like that is such a paramount lesson in all of this.
Yeah. 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 It is. And, I'm hoping that people continue to trust their own gut,
Yeah.
like for that kid who, got bit in his stomach. I mean, that's just a child that's like, how do you avoid that? Like you're in your room, you think you're in a safe place. But the gentleman who's outside 5 o'clock in the morning drinking coffee, he could have been yelling, hooting and hollering or something to draw the attention, but he instinctively knew to not say anything, and they paid him no mind. And that could have gone differently, like who knows what could have happened. So I do think it's paramount that people kind of mind their own business while things like this are happening. Like
Yeah.
people like you and I kind of walk towards them. I do so cautiously.
Yeah.
I'll end on one quick story that kind of talks about this cautiousness
Sure. Yeah.
I trusted my gut on. I'm on those same carriage roads I told you about in Acadia National Park. I'm in a completely different area. There's actually 45 miles of these roads, like intertwined in the mountains and stuff. So it's a large area, and I'm probably 20 miles from the other whoop encounter I'm talking about. So this is a different day, a different year probably, and I'm in a different section. And I'm by myself. I like trying to find ways that I can, ride my bike in relative without many people around. So I've been riding for probably a half hour at this point, and I'm coming to this big curve in the road. And I've been down it before, but not often. And as I'm approaching this curve, I get this really ominous feeling. The wind picks up. And it kind of scared me. Like I start getting this feeling of dread. The wind picks up and I stop my bike. And so I'm there again with one foot on the ground. I'm on my bike and I'm looking ahead and I can't see around this corner.
Oh.
And then in my head, I start picturing this creature, this beast, this humanoid figure in the middle of the road. If I keep going, I would see it. And it feels like something was projected into my mind to be like, I'm around the corner and you're not allowed here, at least today. And it scared me. It wasn't just something I was imagining. I felt weird. I stopped my bike and then an image came into my head and I decided to trust it. I turned my bike around and I went the other way. I went back the way I came. I did not go explore that because of that feeling. It wasn't good. I was almost sick to my stomach. Like it seemed like if I kept going, harm would come to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am a researcher of this stuff, but I'm not really ready to get hurt for it, or potentially killed for it. I do want to encounter these strange things, but I think there is a way to do it safely. I've been on a lot of UFO investigations and I've seen a lot of strange things, but I think it's smart to play it safe. Like you were saying earlier, don't follow the whistles into the woods. And if some creature has the power to project something into my mind, you know what? I'm going to go the other way. And if it's just something I made up, well, okay, at least I'm still safe. You know what I mean? No harm, no foul,
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest lessons with all of this stuff. As much as like you're saying, we kind of charge into the unknown because we want answers. We want the curiosity killed the cat kind of thing. But at the same time, it's something it's a sobering respect that you have to have for this phenomenon, because the reality is, there are how many missing 411 cases that are out there now. There are people disappear. And it's something, I mean, you and I have got a million stories of, and it happens. We don't know what this half of this phenomenon is. We're such novices in all of this that it's crazy.
And it's not for a lack of trying. Like you and I and thousands of others, like we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But we just don't friggin' know, we can have speculations and that's another thing. Like when I talk to people like you or other people, in the community and they start telling me that they know what this stuff is, that's when I stop listening to them. Like, you don't know. You might have an idea. Maybe it's extraterrestrial. Maybe it's some sort of cryptid or something like that. But when people start talking to me about species, and I'm like, all right, I'm not sure how much you really do know.
Yeah, it's a lot of assumptions.
And I think playing around with assumptions can be careless. You could lead people into maybe not following their gut, because they do think they know or whatever. And I just think it makes sense to play it safe and you can speculate all you want, but I don't know. There's a difference between speculation and misinformation, and I'd rather be on the side of speculation,
Oh, I completely agree. Actually, what will be last week's which will be an episode from last month, because this is going to air in May, but what will be an episode from last month, I actually had on Mr. Sam Sheeran and Anne Marino. Sam. Yeah, and we talked about that. We talked about hoaxes both perpetrated by the media and also by laymen. And that was that's the one thing, is this you have to fall back on your instinct, your gut, and integrity, I think, with all of this stuff, and having that inner integrity to know when to stop and turn around and reevaluate before you're sort of blowing assumptions out of the water.
And it's okay to say, I don't know.
100%.
Like you don't have to be an expert. There's no experts in this. You might be able to be an expert like on a case. You might know a case up and down, but you're not an expert on like aliens, in general. Like I write a lot about them, but I know as much as I knew when I first started. That's how much I know now.
Yeah. You can be an expert.
More stories.
You can be an expert, I think, in the knowledge that we have up until now. But I think the learning never quits in this. Because
stops.
Because we are just not in a position at this point to know what the hell is going on. I mean, our little itty bitty perception radius is very small, and we have limits. Our little human brains.
My girlfriend will call it our little pea or our human pea brains. It's hard for us to comprehend some things.
100%. And and I think on the consciousness level, it's like we've got that awareness, but our belief systems and all that stuff. I mean, we squish it down into this tiny little thing, and we're just going along doing our best. Well, thank you so much, Nomar. Where can people get your book? Because they're going to want to pick that up.
Yeah, you can type my name into Google or into Amazon, and my books will pop up. Nomar Slevik, Slevik. I'm sure you can see it on the screen here. But also allmylinks.com/Slevik will get you there as well. I have a podcast called Haunted Pines where I share cool short stories, and I have all my books, and I have some documentaries. So allmylinks.com/Slevik will bring you to all of that stuff.
That's awesome. And it'll be in the show notes, so you guys can pick up on humanoid encounters, creatures, phantoms, and other strange entities sighted in Maine. All of your work is just, it's so great, and it's just so great to have you here. So I'll be calling you to come back. I mean,
we're gonna have to do this like every few months or every 6 months or
100%.
something. Keep sharing stories together because it's fun.
Absolutely, it's so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that was creepy and disturbing, and hopefully it doesn't give everybody nightmares, or well, maybe we hope it does. I don't know. But it's so fascinating. This whole subject to me is so fascinating, because there's this element of high strangeness in it, which has always completely fascinated me. And here we are, just a few days out from the government disclosure of the UFO, the UAP files. And I've already just started to dig into some of the things that were released. I mean, God knows this is not going to be everything that they have. We all know that this is going to be sort of a sampling of whatever they felt was viable to release to the public. But it makes you wonder what we're going to find in there. Like, is there going to be stories that link up to some of these cases that we just talked about with Nomar? Things that people are encountering that have that kind of uncanny valley feeling. Maybe they are related to something interdimensional or alien or something like that. So there's so much that we could discuss and talk about. And once again, I finished this conversation not feeling finished with Nomar's stories. So we're gonna have to have him back, because I mean, let's face it, this stuff is just never ending. I really encourage everybody to pick up his book, In the Pines. It's available on Amazon. And he's just such a fantastic guy, and he's so full of knowledge about not only these just various stories, but he's really insightful about what these things might be. I think one of the big things that we can take away from any of these cases is the ability to be vulnerable and say, I don't know. I don't know what it is. We can theorize till we're blue in the face, and I love to do that. I love to toss these ideas around. But at the end of the day, we're still such a speck in the vast cosmos of what's going on. And our understanding is just so incredibly limited, which is unfortunate, but hopefully it's expanding. Hopefully this consciousness and this, some of the beings that are out there will entrust us enough to take the next step. And I think that's That's all we can kind of hope for. But, going forward with an open mind, open heart, and, remembering that a lot of these beings are just beings. There's a lot of talk right now, things getting slung around that this is demonic, and, it's really easy to label stuff that we don't understand as evil or demons, and it stops us from thinking. And, the easy thing to do is paint phenomenon with a broad brush that says this is evil, so therefore I don't have to think about it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to dissect my own beliefs. I don't have to do any of the above. I can just label it as evil, and then that's where my learning stops. And I highly encourage, I don't really think that there's too many listeners out there of this show that are thinking in that way, but if there is, I would highly encourage, or if you've got people in your life that are of that mindset, I would highly encourage an attitude of curiosity rather than fear, and have the courage to dissect your beliefs, and have the courage and the vulnerability to be mistaken or wrong. That there might be something else in this for you that is impactful and meaningful and expansive. And I think that's all we can do at this point. But anyway, thank you for joining me on this eerie expedition, my dear listeners. And remember, there is no line between the natural and the supernatural. All is consciousness. Until next time, stay curious, friends.
Supernatural Circumstances is a co-production of Entity Seeker, Paranormal Research and Teachings, and the 20th Plane. This podcast is a part of the Curious Cast podcast network. You can find out more about me, Morgan Knudsen, and book me for live appearances at entityseeker.ca. You can also email the show at supernaturalcircumstances.com.
The world is changing. From the misuse of AI and the rise of deepfakes to the dangerous spread of misinformation, it's getting harder for Canadians to separate fact from fiction. That's why having a trustworthy news source is vital. At Global News, we're committed to objective journalism that cuts through the noise. Stick to the facts. Global News, Canada's trusted news.